Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Free Agent Podcast. My name is Meg Schmitz, and welcome to the discussion, which is all about free agency and taking control over your future. The mission of my show is to share inspiring conversations with real people who took the leap into self-employment, business ownership, franchising, and freedom. From corporate refugees and executives tired of the desk job to entrepreneurs and investors looking to share camaraderie and inspiration through their own business journey, my podcast aims to spotlight on real people who stepped into the unknown, took control of their destiny, and became their own boss. So these are conversations that on a week-by-week basis, we've got different guests and different points of view. Today, my guest is Ken Theiler, who's a good friend and business comrade in the Milwaukee market. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning.
So I will let you introduce yourself and talk about your business, which I think will become apparent here shortly. Let's talk about your corporate journey prior to your business journey and how it is that you ended up in the industry where you are now a business owner. So let's start with your corporate journey.
That's a great question, Meg, because I think it helps to connect the dots a little bit, because I'm sure when I took that leap of faith, so to speak, I think all my former colleagues probably thought I was crazy. So I had a lot of traditional corporate jobs. I mean, did the four-year college thing, got my degree in finance, and went and did a corporate finance job for about 5 years. Decided maybe that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I went back to school. I got my MBA and decided I wanted to do marketing, right? It was more general management track, and that was what I wanted to do. And it was a great choice. So from there, I went to work for Johnson & Johnson for about 15 years in a lot of various roles. And it was down in Cincinnati. So the last position I had there was the worldwide director for their bariatric division. So, but I remember sitting down with my wife one evening, and we were happy in Cincinnati. We were happy with Johnson & Johnson. I worked with a lot of really great people there. And it struck us. We had 5 kids. We still have 5 kids, but the oldest one was going into high school. And it just kind of hit us like, do we really like this? Because we don't want to move or do something different when they're in high school. But for us, it was those years are tough enough. We don't want to move them. So we said, if we were ever going to do something else, try something else, take a risk, would we consider something? I mean, again, we liked Johnson & Johnson, we liked Cincinnati, but we said, we got to get ahead of this, because we did the math, and for 12 years, we were going to have somebody in high school. So next 12 years, we got to be happy here doing what we're doing, or we better find something better. So turns out I had a great opportunity to come closer to Milwaukee here. So took on an opportunity that came up with a company called DJO Global as their vice president of marketing. So it worked out really well. It was different in the sense it was a much smaller company than Johnson & Johnson. But because of that, it had a different role, right? And it was more kind of in a startup mode. So very different than the big behemoth traditional companies that tend to move at a little slower pace. So this was much more, hey, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's go get this done. Let's take this company public. What do we got to do? So very different environment. But I was only in that position about a year when they were, again, in an effort to go public, looking to consolidate divisions. And they said, we don't really need 4 VPs of marketing in these 4 divisions. We're going to consolidate this into one. And just tell us when that moving van needs to show up, and we'll get you out to sunny Southern California. And I think my wife and I talked about it for about 2 minutes, maybe. And we said, no, we got our plan. We moved here. 12 years. We're here for 12 years. We're not moving. So it was a tough decision, but at the same time, it was kind of an easy decision. We knew that's not what we wanted, but we really didn't know what was next.
Interesting.
So that's what kind of got us to where we are today. Started to figure out what was next. And a lot of the same was out there, right? Being in the healthcare world, GE Medical's right here in our backyard. And I had some contacts there, and that would have been, I think, the easy thing to do. That's what I'd done for so many years. Mm-hmm. But I also kind of paused and said, well, before I go rushing back to what I know, is there something else I want to do? And I think I always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial itch. And, after looking at what we were doing, and just said, maybe this is a time to kind of scratch that itch and see what is out there. And that's when I started exploring the franchise world.
Interesting. And so it's resonating with me that probably in the conversation with your wife, you had to agree to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Very much so. And probably was actually easier for her. I mean, that's the great thing about having that spouse who sees things a lot clearer. I think we're so into it. Things look so complicated, and it was very quickly simplifying it. And I'm like, but what about this? But what about this? What are we going to do? Look, it'll work out. We know we don't want to go to California, so it's kind of a short discussion. I'm like, well, you're right. So I guess, that's our decision, and let's start to figure out what's next.
And so in deciding to take the leap into business ownership, did you compare different franchises against each other? How did you end up in heating and air conditioning after after your other career?
Yes. And I think, I was parallel pathing initially, right? Looking at a lot of more traditional, jobs, maybe even looking to say, hey, maybe I want to branch into a different industry. In my case, there wasn't exactly a lot of healthcare in the Milwaukee area. There's other cities that are probably bigger hotbeds for healthcare, but looking, do I change industries? Do I try to find some of those healthcare companies in Milwaukee if that's where we're going to stay? And then started to explore the franchise world. That was a really nice thing about the franchise world, right? They're all businesses, right? But they have a process, formula, things in place that allow people who aren't necessarily in those industries to kind of figure it out. At the end of the day, it's still business. And I did kind of gravitate towards more healthcare oriented because that's what I knew. But then in working with the franchise consultant, they started to introduce me to, well, what about these other businesses? I know it's a different industry, but here's kind of their model. And based on your background and what you're telling me, this might work for you. So it really did open the doors to start looking at a lot of industries that I would have never considered.
Interesting, I'm sure, to get the comparison out of the way between corporate job security and business ownership security, and the perception. There are a lot of perceptions about that security that you get with an existing franchise system, and the rails, the bumper guards, and the things that come with that. Was there a point where it became an absolute aha that, we can do this?
Yeah, I think, and one of the things that struck me about, so obviously we landed in a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning franchise. And a lot of the models, being the owner, people always talk about as an owner, well, no one's ever going to be more passionate about your business than you, right? And passion enables you to do a lot of things. But one of the things when you're starting a franchise, and typically smaller, you're that salesperson. You, the owner, have all the passion in the world, and you can sell the heck out of it, right? But I worked in marketing in my career long enough that I understood there's a distinction between marketing and sales. And there was a reason I was in marketing. I'm not that sales guy, right? I worked with a lot of sales guys in my marketing role, but I was not that guy. So when I started to look at different models, and in this model, they're like, you want to be successful? You have to hire a sales guy. I'm like, oh, okay, that resonated with me. And it really was a model that put me into more of a general manager, business development type role. And I'm like, well, that kind of feels like it suits my strengths a little better, right? And so I really started to come back to analyzing these opportunities from a business model perspective, and it became less about the industry they were in and my level of knowledge and comfort with those industries.
And your skill sets and preferences.
Yes.
Yeah. To me, that's one of the key elements of the business evaluation. Ultimately, it's not about the widget. It is, what is your role in the business, and what skill sets are you allowed to use now that in the silo that was your corporate career, there are always skill sets or interests that you have that you can't plug into a job. It's not part of your description. It's not part of your role or responsibility. So were there skills that you were able to tap into where another sort of aha, like, oh, I get to do this, and I haven't used that skill for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, as a business owner, obviously profitability is extremely important. It's in any business, right? But what I quickly learned in my corporate roles in bigger corporations, like in a marketing role, it was all about the top line. Our job was to manage top line. We had all kinds of great, other functions in the corporation that we worked with that managed a lot of those other things. So we always talked about owning a P&L. You really weren't owning the P&L. When you're in a business and it's a small business and it's you are owning the P&L. You understand every dollar that's being spent everywhere. You are critically analyzing that business, determining, is it worth an investment? Do I do this? Do I not do it? So it's a little more chaotic and you're wearing a lot of different hats, but in that general manager mode that I, kind of signed up for marketing, going back to that, this is really a general manager mode, and you kind of have to wear a lot of hats starting a business like this.
Yeah. Are there elements of now being out of the corporate role and in the business that is impacting your kids? Are they paying attention? Okay.
It is. Look, I wouldn't say my corporate jobs were ever easy, right? They were never easy, but you just kind of get in that routine, right? You do a good job. The corporation appreciates you do a good job. They promote you. They give you more responsibility. So you work a little harder. You spend a few more days away from home. All of a sudden, it was like you're going back to, the plus side was, for business, I don't think I've been on nobody's been on an airplane for a while, right? But I mean, since I left the corporate world, I'm home obviously a lot more. So I think my family likes that. I don't know. I should probably check with them. But I think they like the dad's no longer traveling and gone all the time. So that's definitely a plus. I think the big thing it showed them, right, is, I did relatively well in the corporate world. My kids never really wanted for anything. They weren't spoiled, and we always tried to teach them the value of hard work. But watching me go through this process, I think really nailed it home for them that, oh yeah, you gotta work hard. Oh, so that does that. Oh, that pays for that. Or you spent that much on that. They start to, I think, really appreciate the value of hard work, appreciate a strong work ethic and what that can do, and the value of a dollar.
Yeah, you're building some future leaders here by having that. I think that what I've learned over the last year is the dialogue at home, not just between spouses, but the interaction with kids, and you seeing how their day-to-day lives work because you're not on an airplane, but them understanding the importance of your role as a business owner. Now they see it or hear about it more because you're home, and we're all home thanks to the pandemic. But it seems to me that the conversation is much more robust with the family dynamics. And so are any of them interested in incorporating themselves into your business?
It's interesting because I think early on I would have said no, right? And there's always the dynamics, father, son, father, daughter, right? I mean, my oldest son is 21, right? And I look at him and he is very much more of a trades person, right? But that's also the relationship you have to keep intact, right? And I think we know our relationship and are saying, you know what, at some point it might make sense for him to kind of get more integrated. Not right now. I think we value the relationship too much to put that in the way of running a day-to-day business. Ironically, it's now my second oldest is my daughter, who is very business oriented and all of a sudden is taking a lot of interest in, hey, how does that work? And from an advertising perspective, how do you do that? I think that's something as a business owner, it's a good thing to think about, right? When you're in a position of, okay, now that I've built a successful business, what am I going to do with this, right? I mean, I still want to retire at some point. So what do you do with this, right? So you do start to think about, are your kids showing an interest? They all kind of work in the business. Even my two youngest boys, they're my guys that help me kind of keep the warehouse in order on the weekends and get some things cleaned up, get the place, the office space dusted, vacuumed. So they all have taken an active interest. I think some of it is good spending cash for them, but again, it teaches them that, hey, you're not just getting this money to go hang out with your friends. You're going to have to work for it a little bit.
Nice. I've had the same experience when I owned my Great Clips. I had my son come with me periodically just to pick up a broom and sweep hair. Mm-hmm. The things that you hear, what's happening with the cash drawer, what's happening, well, you said it earlier, as the owner, no one is more concerned about the P&L, profit versus loss. What is happening, like particularly in a pandemic? How did that impact your top line, which you were trained to follow? But now you've you've really got that acuity with your bottom line, your profitability.
Yeah.
How did you come through last year? What?
So the good news is it was our best year.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's like, wait, pandemic? I mean, all these businesses were closing their doors. How is that your best year? I will tell you at this time last year, so it's tough because our business, there's a seasonality to it, right? In March and April are traditionally our worst months, right? You're kind of hitting that tail end of the winter. So if people's furnaces are going to break, they're probably already broken. They're not really running as hard. And it's too early that people in this part of the country aren't turning on their air conditioners yet. So we do a certain amount of maintenance at that time of year, as much as we can to kind of get ahead of the summer rush. But you can imagine come the end of March last year and into April, and you're calling customers saying, hey, it's time for us to get in there and do your annual maintenance. And they're looking at the TV going, yeah, let's wait a couple of weeks on that. I don't know if everything's working fine. We don't need you in here yet. So I will tell you, last April was our worst month ever. And like a lot of business owners, I'm going, holy crap, when is this going to end? Is it going to end?
Yeah.
Starting to analyze my cash flow and going, how long can I do this? Right. I think what happened is as people were being forced to kind of stay at home, well, as much as people need heat, right? People also want to be comfortable. And I think people are surprised to learn that. I would tell you, in this part of the country, people complain more about their air conditioning and not having cool air than their furnace when it's 20 degrees out. I still don't quite get it, but I'm telling you from my own experience. So if people got to sit in their house all summer long and an air conditioner's not working, they were going to call. Now they were okay with us in. And so all of a sudden in May, June, July, there was this pent up demand that I wish I could have hired, 3 more technicians at that point.
Yeah.
But it just kind of exploded over the summer, and that trend has kind of continued. So, but yeah, last April, very scary. But it did come back. But I think it also, this is year number 5. We're celebrating our 5-year anniversary next month. So that's a big milestone. But when you do the right things and you build a good customer base, you deliver value, they trust you, they're the ones they're going to come to. And that customer base is just kind of feeds the engine and it keeps it growing.
Yeah. Now you've had an interesting transition here in the last year. Fairly unusual in franchising is to separate from the franchisor and yet remain in the same industry. And so a couple of questions come to mind around that. What retention, or can you measure yet the retention of customers who have stuck with you regardless or because of the rebranding and the service that you've provided in the past?
That was a huge concern, Meg, and probably the biggest risk, right? Because you do all the right things, you deliver great customer service, you build the reviews on all the social media sites. So everyone, if they're going out and looking to their friends or looking at how many reviews does this company have on Google, and are they 5 stars? Are they only 3 stars? A lot of that, it was like questions and concerns about, does all that go away? I mean, you're starting over. Does it look like we're that brand new company again that we worked so hard to get out of that? I will tell you, knock on wood, things are going pretty well, right? This March and April is actually probably our best March and April that we've had so far. So again, the trends and the trajectory it keeps going. So I would say at this point, it hasn't negatively impacted us. In fact, I think we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from customers. They're aware of the change. I think they kind of like the name, which helps. But I think at the end of the day, people don't, as much as I might wake up every day thinking about my furnace and air conditioner, I'm smart enough to know that most people don't. So we're the company that people are glad they know when they need us, but they hope they never need us. They hope they never need to, so when that day comes, I think from a brand recognition, what I've probably learned in the space is most people still have a hard time remembering, what's the name of that company, right? But you go to Google, they do the search engine, they put in a couple keywords and that's their name. That's who I need to call, right? Even though we put the sticker right on the furnace with our phone number, right? People, everybody's got these, right? And they all rely on this. So we've made sure that we've done a really good job in terms of that rebranding and communication plan to let customers know it's the same ownership. We're at the same location. We have the same passionate staff. It's just a different name that better reflects who we are and who we serve. And we've kept it simple.
So the second part of my question is we're covering this particular topic is in the transition now into true free agency. You're out there. You don't have a coach. You don't have the infrastructure. You don't have all of the things that we think about with franchise sports to franchise ownership. So what are your best support mechanisms, or who is your mentor or your coach?
There's one of the great things that I think I've made a lot of great friends over the last 5 years doing this, and a lot of friends from the industry. And what I've found is, as much as we may be competing against some of these companies, look, we're willing to help each other too. And especially if you find a couple people who are a little further outside our territory, they're a little more willing to share kind of what they've done and what they've run into.
True.
So there's definitely been a network of people that I've been able to build and go to for different things. A lot of our suppliers have been really great from that perspective. I will tell you this, and I hope I don't get a ton of calls and unsolicited emails, but I am kind of looking for that business coach. I think that's one thing, Meg, that you touched on, that I do think there's a lot of value in that. And part of what I'm looking for is, do I want something industry specific? Would I rather have someone who just, again, it's all business. Let's just talk about from a business perspective and who might be local. But I think that's probably the biggest gap right now that I feel. We've over 5 years put in a lot of those guardrails, processes, standard operating procedures in play. But like a lot of people, as a business owner, you're encountering new things every day, and having that network of people to be able to go to and say, hey, am I looking at this right? Because that's the biggest difference when you're, people always say it can kind of be lonely at the top. Mm-hmm. There's truth to that. And when you're in a different position and you got peers and everyone else, and different things you can look at and benchmark and best practices. Some of that still applies, but at the end of the day, you have to make the decision, and you got to look at yourself in the mirror every day and hope you made the right decision, and appreciate that you won't always make the right decision. So maybe it's a confidence thing, but again, I'm also smart enough to know that I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I still have a lot to learn. And having that coach or someone I can kind of go to bounce some of those things off of is great.
So we have danced around you and I have danced around the First Friday group that meets on a monthly basis. That has been an amazing support mechanism since we reverted to the virtual platform along with everybody else. It's actually a much more effective platform to share best practices. And so in that group, you will find that there's not only plenty of coaching in the moment, but also a number of people who are business coaches. So you can kind of interview them in a very low-key way in the First Friday meeting. It's one of the beauties of the pandemic is when we used to meet in person, you'd have to wait until the end of the meeting to exchange a business card. Yeah. Well, now it's happening in chat. Say, hey, Ken, I'd love to talk to you, and let's set up another time to talk. So it's happening in the moment. And I've heard from a lot of the business owners that this year of Zoom First Friday meetings has been far more productive than the 7 or 8 years prior to that. So come on in, the water is warm.
It sounds like I need to re-engage.
Well, it's been fun to, from the outside, be able to hear about your course corrections and your successes. You've got a solid foundation with your family, with your wife. That, I think, is the most important element of success, is that under the roof, what does it look like with your family? And so I have heard from a number of people that you've got a great support mechanism at home.
It's worked out really well. I think, again, we're always learning on all fronts. And I think my wife and I also quickly learned that our relationship is much better if we just keep it at home. And again, there's things she still does in the business, but we're very strategic and very open about talking about these roles that she can do, and she can do them at, when her schedule permits. Because I get with 5 kids that she's managing every day, making sure everyone's getting where they need to go. That's a full-time job, and I get it. So it certainly took some communication between her and I to make sure we kind of understood how this dance was going to work as we started this thing up. Yeah,
well, and when I'm working with anyone who's evaluating business ownership, the 3 pillars that I bring into every conversation is, how is this impacting your wife, your lifestyle, and your money? every conversation so that before a business decision is made, you're confident. And pardon the pun, it's in Milwaukee, there are a lot of female breadwinners. It's always important to keep as a priority in this evaluation, how is this going to impact your family and your activities, hobbies, and interests? What marriage needs more stress? Especially if you've got a nice, calm, really productive marriage, you don't want to put any additional stress on it. So congratulations to the two of you on making a business decision that preserves the integrity of your personal relationship between you and your kids.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you would like to tell the listeners about the positive nature of owning your own business? What are some of the biggest takeaways that are the benefits that you didn't realize until you owned your own business while you were still a corporate person?
I think when a lot of us start into this, right, we see aspirations of, hey, it's not working for the man now. It's like all this hard work goes put money in my own pocket, right? And there's some truth to that too. But I would say probably the biggest surprise, Meg, was more this satisfaction that I got from just the empowerment of doing this. This is my gig, right? And it's not all going to be successful or unsuccessful because of just me. But I mean, I have to build a good team, right? I got to make sure they understand our mission, the vision, what we're trying to do. So you have a big role in that. So it is very empowering. And like I talked about before, it isn't just about managing the top line now. It's like, oh my gosh, it's everything, right? So I found a lot of satisfaction from that. And I think that continues to keep me excited every day about what I'm doing. Again, once you kind of get it going, it's like, now you've got all this momentum. Now, how do we take it somewhere else, right? Do we start a division here? Do I want to buy a business over there, right? I mean, all of these things, it just keeps going. So there's still a lot of excitement about it, but it's that empowerment. It's that truly working for yourself. You got to look at yourself in the mirror every day and know that you did everything you could that day before to make today even better. So it's definitely been a very exciting experience. I tell other people there's a lot of positives to it, but I also tell people, we all know not every business makes it. And I always tell people, I said, do your homework, have a good business plan, but you're the only person that can answer this question. But I said, that business plan looks great on paper. And any business school professor is going to say, yep, makes a ton of sense, right? But when you look at it and you see those negatives that first year or two on that bottom line, we can all only answer for ourselves, but do you have the stomach? Forget about the capital. Do you have the stomach to get through that, to get to those years where, oh, I made a profit and it's like a fraction of what you used to make in the corporate world by year 3, but you're like, hey, we're profitable, right? So you gotta have a strong stomach and you gotta believe in what you built, right? And you're tracking your business plan. It said we'd lose money year 1 and year 2, but man, when you're living through it, and you got a family and you got 5 kids and trying to get them all through school and keep food on the table, it can be extremely stressful, but there is a payoff, right? Stick to the plan, work your plan. There is a payoff.
I couldn't have said it better myself. All these things are going through my head, the same words that you just spoke. So thank you for reading my mind. The notion of investing in yourself, your boss, your job will never love you the way that you love you. And the truth of the matter is business ownership, it looks sexy sometimes and it's not. It's not sexy every day. Last year, we had to live through all that uncertainty, whether you're an essential business or a non-essential business. Some people were drinking, some companies were drinking from a fire hose and didn't know what to do. Other people were shut down for much, much longer than other municipalities or states. So it's not always sexy. And you do have to have that inner resolve that every day you're going to get up. I'm thinking about Barry Hentz, my favorite former Army guy, and climbing that hill and putting on that pack and leading the charge, knowing that your employees are looking at you to say, come on, follow me. And so I know I know, as a business owner, not every day is a great day, but here you are, you've made it through a number of transitions from corporate refugee to franchise owner and now independent business owner. Tell people how they can contact you. Is there a website? So Hometown Heating and Air, how can people find you, Ken?
So they can email me. It's ken.theiler, and the spelling's a little funny, but THEILER at yourhometownheating.com. All else fails, just go to the website, submit a contact. There's a contact page there. Call the number there. They can find me there.
And so your phone won't be ringing with business coaches, or maybe it will, but that'll be after you've already decided on who you want to work with. So we'll make sure that that you have plenty of advance notice on when this episode is going to come out. Great. And we'll have the graphics and other supplies for you to use with your social media platforms that you prefer to use. And you can look for that. I think it'll probably be 3 to 4 weeks from now.
Okay.
Right at the point where your phone will be ringing because people will want that air conditioning. Yes.
We're bracing ourselves. It happens every year. We're going to get that first warm day. Everyone's going to turn on their air conditioners at the same time, and it's
oopsie.
Yep.
But it's so true. That's the thing that really sells heating and air conditioning is that if you don't have it, you're not going to wait to get it done. You wish it worked 5 minutes ago, just like being locked out of your car or something. Yes. It doesn't matter what's happening in the economy or with a particular virus or health event. If you're cold, you want to be warm. And if you're warm, you want to be cooler. So you're always in demand.
That's it.
Well, it has been great to have you on today. I appreciate your time in making yourself available. I think your story is so fundamentally unique in the transitions that you've made. So thanks for sharing your story with me.
You bet. Thank you, Meg. I appreciate it.